For those who identify as Christians, you're likely familiar with the challenging inquiry often posed by atheists. How can God exist while allowing evil and suffering to persist in the world? Or, on a more intimate level, one might wonder, if there is a God, how could He permit me to endure the pain of being abused by my parents and feeling the sting of rejection from my brother during my childhood? Throughout the years, I have wrestled deeply with this question, grappling with the complexities it presents. Despite this internal struggle, abandoning my faith has never been an option I've seriously considered. The reason lies in the undeniable experiences and profound encounters I've had with Jesus throughout my life. These moments have been etched into my memory, serving as a testament to a presence that I cannot dismiss. Mainstream Christianity has offered me a spectrum of answers to my question, each varying based on the denomination I consulted. The responses ranged from a simple, "I don't know," to more elaborate explanations such as generational curses and the sin nature compelled your parents and brother to act that way. Faced with these varied answers, I decided to delve deeper and wondered, how does the Bible itself address these questions? I found myself at a crossroads with two distinct paths. I could overlook historical truths and search for answers solely within the New Testament, or I could acknowledge that the Bible as we know it today, with both Old and New Testaments, did not come into existence until several hundred years after the lifetimes of Christ, Paul, and the Apostles. During that early period, what we now call the Old Testament was their sole scripture. Isn't it intriguing how modern Christians often dismiss the Old Testament as irrelevant, branding themselves as New Testament believers? Yet, for the first 300 to 400 years of Christianity, the followers of Jesus relied entirely on the Old Testament, adhering to its teachings and principles. However, I digress. I chose to embrace the historical context surrounding the Bible and turn to the Old Testament in search of answers. In its pages, I discovered that none of the righteous figures, from Abraham to David and others, led lives of comfort. Instead, their journeys were fraught with challenges and hardships, sometimes marked by profound suffering. It is, after all, these very struggles that inspired David to pen Psalm 23, a testament to enduring faith amidst adversity. This revelation hit me like a lightning bolt. Considering the Bible that Christians followed for the first 300 to 400 years, the question of how God could let my parents abuse me and my brother reject me becomes utterly irrelevant. In those early days, Christians never presumed that God would grant them comfortable lives simply because they believed or were innocent children. So where does this notion that Christians are entitled to easy, trouble-free lives originate? Church history points to its roots in American Christianity during the Great Depression, not from the Bible. But I digress. If that question fades into insignificance, another more pressing question emerges. How on earth did I, as a child, manage to survive such a tormenting childhood? Back then, I had no knowledge of Jesus, and the name Jehovah was a mystery to me. My parents were not Christians, yet here I stand today, thriving against all odds. How is that even possible? From a solely New Testament perspective, trying to answer that question can lead one into a tangled web of revelations, unanchored by the Bible's core teachings. However, when examining the Bible from the viewpoint of the early Christians, the answer becomes clear and direct. Imagine Moses standing before the Israelites, poised to enter the Promised Land. His voice carries across the crowd as he addresses them not as newcomers, but as though they themselves had experienced the Exodus from Egypt. This might seem odd, given that any Bible reader knows that the original generation who left Egypt has passed away by this point, except for Joshua and Caleb. Yet Moses speaks with an understanding that transcends time, treating these people as if they had lived through the same trials and triumphs. This approach highlights a significant cultural difference. While Hellenistic culture in the Western world often emphasizes individual experience and historical accuracy, the Hebraic culture into which the Bible was born prioritizes collective memory and identity. From a Hebraic perspective, as rooted in the teachings of the Bible, my childhood identity was intrinsically connected to a deep, albeit nascent, understanding of Jesus, the Bible, Jehovah, and the Torah. Even as a child, my path was envisioned as one that would eventually lead me to a fuller knowledge and a conscious decision to embrace the teachings of Jesus, the scriptures, and the guiding light of the Torah. In contrast, from a westernized Hellenistic viewpoint, my identity as a child was perceived as a blank slate, void of any inherent knowledge of Jesus, the Bible, Jehovah, or the Torah. Such a perspective allowed for a future where I might grow up to either embrace the Torah or choose a different path, perhaps even embracing atheism. However, given that Jehovah is the God of the Bible and thus a distinctly Jewish God, his perception of me was always through a Hebraic lens. In the Bible, specifically the Old Testament, Jehovah promises that those who follow the Torah, as I diligently do now, will find salvation. Just as he foresaw the second generation of Israelites within the first, he glimpsed the person I am today in the child I once was. Because of this divine foresight, he rescued me from the struggles of my early years, guiding me toward a life where I now flourish and prosper, even though I, back then, did not live by the Torah or even knew what it was. Do you see the differences between the Hellenistic perspective of the Bible and the Hebraic perspective? From a Western perspective of the Bible, grappling with questions like, how could God allow my parents to hurl hurtful words and abuse me? And why did my brother turn his back on me when I needed him the most? Seems nearly impossible. The notion of finding peace and thriving after such a traumatic childhood feels out of reach. However, viewed through a Hebraic lens, these questions find clarity. Jehovah does not promise us a life free of hardship. Instead, he sees the person I am destined to be, shaped by resilience and guided by the teachings of the Torah. It was this foresight that led him to preserve me through those turbulent years to become who I am today, living a life of purpose and fulfillment. What about yourself? Which perspective of the Bible do you prefer?